How will Jimmy Garoppolo's thumb affect your 49ers decision in the FFPC Playoff Challenge number 2? Who is the chalk core you need to play in this year's competition? And how do you solve a problem like Cincinnati in winning $100,000 in the FFPC Divisional Playoff Challenge? Plus, the 2020-2021 FFPC Playoff Challenge 2 runner-up, J.R. Covelle, joins us to talk about his construction of last year's second-place team, as well as handicapping the Titans skill position players not named Derrick Henry, whether Jerick McKinnon will be a thing in the 2021 Challenge number 2, and much more. We've got a great show for you. Farrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now listening to the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by MyFFPC.com, with your hosts Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here's Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you to the Quiet Hollers. Ladies and gentlemen, remember to check out their music at quiethollers.com or anywhere you pay for your podcast and music as well. iTunes, Spotify, whatever it is, the Quiet Hollers are there. Greetings and salutations to all you Bulkaholics and Ferrelliacs. Welcome indeed to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by MyFFPC.com. I'm your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. My co-host is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Farrell Elliott. Farrell, I don't know where you're at in the world famous FFPC Playoff Challenge. I know that we have just under 600 spots to go in the Fantasy Football Players Championship Divisional Playoff Challenge, which will lock in, I don't know, roughly, about 19 hours, 18 and a half hours from now. I don't know where you're at in either of these competitions, but it's going to be a great divisional round of fantasy football and NFL football, man.
Oh, Bucky, you're not kidding. Where I'm at is usually where I'm at. I'm looking up at a lot of great players in front of me. However, teams were competitive. I added 2 more. That gives me 4, 2 in each contest. 2 in the $35 contest and 2 in the $200 contest. And I really think that's a good number. If everybody isn't playing 4, they need to step on up and do that. And it's allowed me to get a very, very good mix of players together. And I'm encouraged about this next group of playoff games. Wild Card Weekend was a blast, like we said it would be. There weren't a lot of big surprises, but I didn't expect Buffalo Bills to reel off such a perfect game, and I didn't expect, despite the fact that the Raiders played so horrifically at some positions in Cincinnati, for that game to come down to the last play. So it's going to be a lot of surprises this weekend. We'd love to talk about it.
You know, you're a Raiders fan. They play in the same division as the Chiefs, same division as the Chargers. Mm-hmm. Is the ceiling for them a wild card appearance next year as well, Farrell? Or do you expect bigger things from Derek Carr, Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller, Josh Jacobs in the game there in Las Vegas?
Story still to be told. It's a situation with the coaching staff and the quarterback. I came to the determination after the Cincinnati game that his interception and his fumble, turning the ball over twice on the road, is what led to the defeat. And I question if Carr is the quarterback to take them to where they need to be with the fact that, and you know, everyone loves the player, and he would be such a it would be such a tough loss in free agency or to move another direction through the draft. I don't think the answer is in the draft at the quarterback position this year. He threw the ball over 50 times last week, I think, which is a recipe for disaster. But he did catch the team up, and Josh Jacobs played very, very well and ran the ball very well. You can add next year. The one thing I can tell you right now, especially if the new head coach for the Denver Broncos is Eric Bieniemy, that we're going to be looking at a fourth difficult team in that mix, and everyone on every week when they play interdivision ball in the AFC West is going to be challenged, because Denver's going to get a lot better too, I think.
Farrell, you're an NFL player agent. Certainly you're privy to conversations that we just don't get anywhere else. What's the percentage chance that Eric Bieniemy is indeed a head football coach next season?
His time has come. I think it's past time. I've been surprised that he hasn't gotten the offer. You don't know exactly what's behind that, but he's a tremendous, tremendous coach. Now, as far as I understand, as general manager candidates and coaching candidates make their moves throughout the league, Eric's only interview is there at Denver, the state where he went to college, and a general manager that's known for making the right moves in George Payton, who came over from the Vikings. You know, George was at the Vikings for a long time, and he stayed until it became proper for him to leave. And I'd like to see him put his stamp on that team. And if he goes with Eric, I think they'd be in the right direction.
I love this stuff that we're getting in before we even tease the program tonight, because Farrell, your experience and your intellect and your sources are invaluable for this program, and I can't wait to get into this once the Super Bowl is done, because I know you'll have a lot more for us. I do want to remind everybody that coming up on tonight's program, it is our FFPC Divisional Playoff Challenge preview show. We're going to help you set those rosters. We're going to help you craft those lineups. We're going to talk a little bit about Cam Akers, C.J. Uzomah, A.J. Brown, many more players on tonight's program. Plus, the 2020-2021 FFPC Playoff Challenge number 2 runner-up, J.R. Covelle, is going to join us, and he's going to take us behind the scenes on his philosophy of managing lineups for this competition, his thoughts on Buffalo Bills tight end Dawson Knox in this year's version of the contest, and much more. Shout out to the chat room right now. You can post your questions you might have in there. We're already talking to our favorite correspondent from the Ivy League, which, by the way, I was going to mention this. I forgot to mention this to Dizzle this week. Saturday Night Live this past week, there was a sketch, and I don't know if Hudson Kern-Reeve, our Cornell professor, knows about this, but there was a sketch on SNL this week from Cornell University. At least that was where it was lampooned. It wasn't actually set in Cornell, but Cornell was the setting for the sketch. So good stuff there. It was an okay sketch. On a scale of 1 to 10, I give it a 4. But that is besides the point. Hudson Kern-Reeve is joining us in the chat room tonight. You can follow us on Twitter at HSFFOR. I am at Eric Balkman. You can follow our guest tonight, J.R. Covelle, on Twitter, JRBeef14. That's JRBeef14. And, of course, you can check out the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at KFFSC.com. Facebook.com/HSFFOR is where to reach us. If you want to give us a call, please do so. Our phone number is 347-426-3682. That's 347-GAME-OVA. If you want to email us, our email address is highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. If you have any questions for us, send them in now. We'll try to get to all of them in the fantasy feedback segment coming up later on in the show, thanks to our audio engineer and my best friend Bryce, and our producer and mutual friend Rob. If you have not registered for the 2021-2022 FFPC Playoff Challenge number 2, what are you waiting for? We've doubled the grand prize from last year. It was $50,000 last year. So, you didn't do so good in Wild Card Weekend. Take a shot at 5 figures for the divisional round. No. We're not doing that this year. $100,000 grand prize. It is now your time to take your chance at 6 figures. Where else can you get a 6-figure grand prize this late in the season? It's happening right now, and it's happening at myffpc.com. We have fewer than 550 spots open out of 1,500 that they are going to fly starting tomorrow. Get in your registrations now. I always say this too. Get in your registrations early. You can formulate your lineups later. Don't worry about that. Just make sure you have some skin in the game, and that's the way to do it right now. You want to get in the Football Guys Playoff Challenge 2, $35. That's going to sell out pretty quick. The wee hours of the morning tomorrow. So if you want to get in on that, you got to get in now because you can't go to bed tonight and then wake up and expect to be signing in for that.
Nope.
If you are looking for some advice on that, we're going to give you plenty tonight. You can also go to rotoviz.com/podcast to listen to two-time FFPC Playoff Challenge number 2, sixth-place finisher Vince Staffolino on the high-stakes lowdown. That is rotoviz.com/podcast. Vince Staffolino, not only has he won a ton of money in the FFPC, but Farrell, he's won a lot in the KFFSC over the last few years too.
Vince does very, very well, and he's a good player. He's a threat to win whenever he plays. I haven't decided whether I'm going to forgive him for being a no-show. He's announced that he'll be a no-show at our first annual KFFSC Super Bowl party in Draft Balky, but I guess since he's helping you with the RotoViz, that I can look the other way. So,
yeah, we always forgive people who are able to help either the FFPC or the KFFPC out in any capacity. Vince Staffolino is certainly meeting those obligations. We have our guest tonight, J.R. Covelle, the runner-up in the FFPC Playoff Challenge number 2 last year, coming up in just a couple of minutes here. Farrell, before we get to him, I just want to rifle through a couple of pieces of news that came up today or yesterday in the NFL that pertains to submitting your lineups for the FFPC Playoff Challenge number 2, the divisional round. Randall Cobb expects to play in the divisional round. He was activated off injured reserve for the Packers, this according to ESPN.com. Now, remember that Cobb has been on the shelf for the core muscle surgery that he underwent roughly 6 to 7 weeks ago. He said he could have played in Week 18 against the Lions. Packers held him out, but he should be in the lineup. Probably no Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who's listed as doubtful for the game against the 49ers Saturday night. But Devontae Adams is going to be out there. Allen Lazard is going to be out there. Randall Cobb should be out there as well. Now, this is interesting, Farrell, because I think as we try to formulate these lineups, does this take the shine off of Devontae Adams a little bit and put more of a precedence on getting Aaron Rodgers in your lineup? Or does the Randall Cobb thing not affect you on what you're doing with your Packers in the divisional round challenge?
Oh, I think Randall Cobb always affects the Packers, Balky, and he affects them most in the big games. He seems to play better against the bigger opponents, and you could say the same thing about Aaron Rodgers, 5-1 versus teams in the playoffs this year. 37 TDs and 4 interceptions for Rodgers, and Cobb makes him better. Rodgers hadn't turned it over since mid-November. You know, and when he has a player like Cobb added to the mix, it only strengthens the passing game. It seems to strengthen it when the weather's bad and it's typical Green Bay football because, as Rodgers said, let's get Randall Cobb back in here. He's a true Packer, and that's what he is. I've seen many points in this game, and Cobb's biggest influence is that he will elevate Rodgers. The people that are around Rodgers at the receiver position, I think generally all of them are underrated. The people that play fantasy football are very much in the know that what Cobb brings to the Packers, especially to Packer. I'll tell you what, whenever we draft in Kentucky, Ron Meyer is always looking for Randall Cobb somewhere in the draft.
Randy Cobb, indeed, for two-packer in KFFSC and the FFPC. Certainly that's going to help him out on third downs. This is giving me a bump for Aaron Rodgers, maybe a little bit, not a ton, but a little bit of a detriment to Devontae Adams' value in the divisional round. Let's stick with that same game. Jimmy Garoppolo, battling a thumb injury and a shoulder injury, has not been designated with any kind of injury designation, for lack of a better word, for the divisional game against the Packers Saturday night. Kyle Shanahan, according to or in reporting to Jimmy Garoppolo's practice week, the quote was, threw the ball great. He looked as good as he did the week before. He said that the thumb issue for Garoppolo is a bigger issue than the shoulder problem. Garoppolo's thumb, he's been dealing with this the last few weeks. He's looked really good outside of that one really bad, and I think that wasn't a physical thing. I think that was a mental thing where he threw that pick late against the Dallas Cowboys in the wild card round. Obviously, the game plan for the Niners is let's run the ball with Mitchell and Samuel. Let's not have Jimmy Garoppolo being put in a position to win the game for us. But Farrell, knowing that FFPC Divisional Playoff Challenge number 2 players have to make a decision on Kittle and Samuel, knowing that it's going to be frigid. It's so funny. I was going to bring this up on the show tonight. I spent the last hour and a half before the show tonight. My brother, both of my brothers have season tickets for the Packers at Lambeau Field. One of them has really good tickets. He sold them out. The other one, not so good tickets. And he texted me tonight. He's like, it's getting to be name your own price for these tickets. And he's way up in the nosebleeds. I mean, way up there. And I'm trying to get somebody to go with me. And even people in Northeast Wisconsin feel like, it's too cold. I can't go. I'm going to freeze my giblets off. I can't go. That's what I'm dealing with right now. I told my brother, I'm like, I'll go with you, but I got to find somebody to go with. And everybody says it's going to be too cold. If it's too cold for the diehard Northeast Wisconsin Packers fans to go to the game, Farrell, is it going to be too cold for Jimmy Garoppolo's thumb to respond and make George Kittle and Deebo Samuel good divisional playoff challenge players to be chosen in that contest this year?
Let's add Elijah Mitchell to this list, and let's talk about him. Las Vegas has installed him at 80, 82, something like that is the number over and under for Mitchell in the game. We talked about the pick, the Anthony Brown pick from the Dallas Cowboys, and you referred to it as a mental lapse. I think, Balky, that we've got to return to taking a look at that hand. When you can't grip the ball, your control weakens, and when you have a thumb injury, the ball, when you try to put something extra behind it, it can sail on you. And I think that's what happened when Brown intercepted that ball. And then there was another almost interception that would have been a disaster for the 49ers when Diggs dropped it. Now, it was a big play in the game, and it would have been nullified by one of Dallas's many penalties. But my point is that Garoppolo made a lot of mistakes in this game. He made a mistake when he lined up for the quarterback sneak. He saw what he wanted. He got so excited he snapped the ball before Williams, the tackle, got set. It was not the perfect game that everyone knew. And I'm a big Garoppolo fan, first of all. I root for him. But this is a grade 3 sprained thumb. I just think it's a tough call for this player to come to Green Bay and play in this situation. Now, the defense returns your favorite, University of Louisville's J.R. Alexander comes back. He's listed as questionable, but everybody says he's going to play. On the offensive side, Rodgers gets back Bakhtiari to go along with Cobb. So it's a situation where more is going to be expected out of Garoppolo than was in Dallas, and I don't know if he's got the physical skills to deliver. And yes, the weather will be a factor, and California teams have historically fared poorly on the road. And what'd you say the temperature is going to be tomorrow?
It's going to be below freezing. I mean, like the thing is, the wind chill is the biggest thing, right? Because you can be right around 0 or above 0, but the wind chill is going to be huge. Tomorrow, I'm looking at a forecast for the Packers-Niners game, which goes off at 8:15 Eastern time. We are looking at 15 degrees right now in that game, but the wind chill will actually probably drop to 0 degrees, and by the end of the game, you're looking at -7 degrees for that game at Lambeau Field.
And that's where you get in trouble. And you mentioned a mental aspect in the game. It's very, very difficult to keep focus for players. You talk to players about how weather affects them. It's not that they're necessarily freezing to death, but it takes so much concentration to play the game. And when you're dealing with physical problem of freezing to death, it's hard to think quick. It's hard to move. It's hard to get your body doing what you want to do. Packer players know how to do it. 49er players, it could be a tough matchup. But they've come a long way. I'm a big Garoppolo fan, and everything that he accomplishes tomorrow, I'm all for. But as far as who I'm going to put in my lineup tomorrow, who I'm going to play in this next contest in the FFPC, I'm going to look at the running back Mitchell, because if the defense can threaten the Packers, San Francisco's going to want to run the ball, and I think they're going to run it through Mitchell.
You know what's interesting about what you just said is I think if Sigmund Bloom, who does a great job with the footballguys.com podcast over there, I think he nailed this on the head. We are going to know, and this won't help fantasy players out, but we are going to know about halfway through the first quarter, maybe after the first quarter, whether this is going to be a Green Bay blowout or whether this is going to be a tight game all the way through. And I think that's apropos. I think that is what is going to happen tomorrow in this game. Now, a lot of the pundits up there that I've talked to in my terrestrial radio show, my afternoon show I have up here, Packers Experts, they said, it's fun to talk about the weather and the cold and everything. They think it's overrated, and they think that good teams or great teams, in this case with San Francisco, can overcome that. Now, if the Green Bay Packers are able to stop Elijah Mitchell, if they're able to stop Deebo Samuel out of the backfield, then I think you're right. I think Garoppolo is put in a position where he can't succeed. George Kittle is probably a fade at that point. It all depends what you think about this Packers defense. You mentioned and Farrell, listen, how can the Packers lose, right? They have Jair Alexander, University of Louisville, coming off IR. They have Randall Cobb, University of Kentucky, coming off IR. You got the confluence of two of the greatest institutions for college football in history coming back to the Packers with Cobb and Alexander tomorrow. Going to happen. I don't know. Seriously, I don't know what's going to happen, but I think there's a lot of things working in the Packers' favor right now. The last thing I want to get to before we talk to our guest tonight, the runner-up of last year's FFPC Playoff Challenge number 2, J.R. Covelle, will join us here shortly, is Kansas City. Darrell Williams is listed as questionable for the divisional round against the Bills. Now, he got in limited work yesterday, limited work today, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire not even on the injury report at all. You look at the Chiefs' situation here, Farrell, for the purposes of this playoff challenge number 2. Probably going to be Jerick McKinnon, probably going to be CEH splitting the work for the Chiefs. Knowing that the Chiefs have a really good chance at getting to the Super Bowl, would you be putting any chips on McKinnon or Edwards-Helaire in your lineups for this challenge?
No, I wouldn't. But that being said, I think McKinnon has earned the touches that he will get, and he's certainly earned the respect of his teammates. He's been a very good player, a player that brings fresh legs to this team, a veteran player that all of us in fantasy football are well aware of, and a player that has flashed before. And he's kind of like that back that's coming into the playoffs that has the veteran status and can deliver. He looks good catching the ball. He looks good running the ball. I think he increases the level of play of the quarterback. I think he increases the level of the play of the tight end. One thing that people forget about Kelsey is he's a fantastic blocker. And you take a running back that's catching the ball, having contact balance, getting yards after the catch, making things happen after the catch. That's offensive linemen, including the tight end, including the other receivers, love to block for a player like that. So it just elevates the team significantly to have an explosive running back. And CEH has been a very good player. We'll have to consider how hobbled he is, but there's just not enough touches there to overcome the necessity of playing one of the big three, Mahomes, Kelsey, Hill. And Hill is so explosive. But I think that's how it runs for me. Mahomes is the quarterback I want. I'd like to have Kelsey on another team. I'm not fading Hill, but I just don't have enough teams to live without Mahomes or Kelsey, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, and because of my blabbering tonight, I don't know if we have enough time to get to everything I wanted to ask our guest tonight, but we are going to bring him in right now, a man who first dove in to the world of fantasy sports way back in middle school in 1992.
Wow.
When Pearl Jam and Green Day and Nirvana were just a figment of our imagination, right? That's when he started playing fantasy sports. He and his friends got into a rotisserie baseball league where they tracked the stats on paper before the internet made it so easy to do so. He currently lives in Boston. He's married to his beautiful wife, Erica. He has 3 kids, Jude, who is 9, Isla, who is 7, and Sonny, who stands in at 3 years old. He is the commissioner of a 14-team fantasy football league that's been active for the better part of 2 decades, the majority of the same owners coming back each and every year, and that helped fund, or I beg your pardon, his performance last year in the FFPC Divisional Playoff Challenge helped fund his entry fee for that league because he cashed a $15,000 runner-up prize last season. You follow him on Twitter at JRBeef14. That's JRBeef14. Please welcome in to the program, J.R. Covelle. J.R., thanks so much for hanging out with us this week. I know it's probably been a busy week for you submitting all these lineups as you try to not only get back to where you were last year, but maybe one spot higher so you can cash that $100,000 grand prize. Welcome, man. How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm doing great. I'm actually not in Boston right now. I am in Florida enjoying the nice weather. So it's a great time not to be in Boston. And this is going to be fun. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on. So what part of Florida? You're not going to the Buccaneers-Rams game on Sunday, are you?
No. I'm in Delray Beach. A beautiful part of Florida, right on the coast. It's a great. I totally recommend it if you're coming to Florida and you want to get away from the touristy destinations. Delray Beach is a great place to go. Bars, restaurants, it's beautiful.
Well, JR, let me tell you, I will speak from personal experience. I am sitting in negative wind chill degree weather as I am two Aaron Rodgers Hail Marys southwest of Lambeau Field right now. Florida sounds pretty darn good. You are living the life right now. I want to talk fantasy football with you so badly with all the lineups that people are submitting. Before we get into that, can you tell the listeners what you're doing for a living when you are not dominating the Fantasy Football Players Challenge? I beg your pardon, the Fantasy Football Players Championship Playoff Challenge number 2, like you did last year.
My wife and I own a real estate and design firm called Covelle & Company, but don't be fooled. She's the heart, soul, brains, and brawn behind the company's success. She is a rock star. Check her out. Check us out at CovelleCo.com. You'll get to see everything we do.
Oh, that's cool. That is really cool. I love that. I thought you, Balky, might defer to your classic Ferris Bueller line. If you have the means, join JR for this weekend down in Florida.
We highly recommend it.
Hey, you're recommended. There you go. JR, it's so nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, guys.
It's great to talk to all you guys. Noted winners. I have become the official auditor of the show. I don't know how this happened for a guy whose numbers are definitely not my thing, but somehow I've become the official auditor. And I think in that role, the question that I have to ask you is about your $15,000 win and exactly what you did with it. But it's not a fact that we're so nosy about it. It's just lesser mortals like myself, also known as losers, that did not win in fantasy, would like to know what you did with the money, because if it doesn't impress us enough, then it takes the loss. It takes a little sting out of the loss, But if you're really going to impress me, and I'm supposed to ask if you have any of it left. A man like you, it doesn't matter,
So I am really bullish on cryptocurrency. So I use the winnings to buy and invest in some Bitcoin, and I'm still holding it today. So yeah, I got most of it left.
Oh, I got guys that will cheer that on to no end. Congratulations for that move.
You're either on the cryptocurrency bandwagon or you're not, and I am all in. I am on it.
Good for you.
Thank you.
So, JR, this is probably a bad question for me to ask because I looked at my crypto account earlier today. I just got to stave this off, right? I just got to weather the storm. Yeah. Everything's going to bounce back. Bitcoin, Solana coin, it's going to happen for me, right?
Yeah, listen, my advice is you only lose when you sell it. So hold it, and you'll be good in the long run.
I will be holding it, and hopefully I will be good in the long run. You were good in the long run in the FFPC Divisional Challenge last year. And this is something I ask anytime we have successful playoff challengers on this program. What's your process of setting a lineup? Now, as opposed to last week where we had 12 players, you only have 8 players on a roster in this competition. Are you mapping out the bracket of where you see, what teams you see winning each game and then basing your lineup off that? Are you basing it purely on who has the highest upside, who has the highest point potential? Take us through sort of how you build a lineup and maybe how you built your winning lineup last year or your runner-up lineup last year.
Sure. So first thing I do is I back into the QB position. I'll pick my QB last. I feel like at this point in the playoffs, most of the QBs left have the ability to get you the 3 to 4 touchdowns and 300-plus yards in any given game. So I try to fill out my other positions first and then kind of see what's left for quarterbacks. I mean, you got Mahomes, Allen, Rodgers, Brady, even throw Burrow in there. You got 5 quarterbacks right there that can give you a 300-plus yard game and 3 to 4 touchdowns. So filling out the other positions, I always try to look for the best athlete on the team, the player that I expect to touch the ball the most. Who will the offense run through in any given game? And can you predict what kind of games each team will play? Is it going to be a shootout? Is it going to be a tight game where the defense and the controlling the clock is going to be the difference between winning and losing? And lastly, if I can, I try to pick one player off the beaten path so my team is unique. Last year I took Tom Brady. I feel like a lot of people were on Mahomes, Rodgers, and Allen. No one really expected Brady to make the Super Bowl, so I picked him, and he outperformed them, made it to the Super Bowl. But I was beaten by someone else who was more off the beaten path. So the winning team had Leonard Fournette on their team, and I was winning until he broke that 30-yard run in the third quarter. Fournette broke that run, scored the touchdown, put him ahead, and the Buccaneers were up by so much that every time they got the ball, it was run, and Brady just did not throw the ball really much the rest of the game. So if you can find that unique player, I think that's important because that sets your team, between your team and other teams. So that's important to me, but I wouldn't stretch it to do that. If something organically comes, then pick them, but I wouldn't go pick the Rams' third receiver, Van Jefferson, just to make a splash.
Last week.
Carol, hold on.
Oh, go
Carol, let me just interject here real quick because we do have a question in the chat room, and I think this is an important one. I've been trying to answer this question all week. AFC. I think the big game is Sunday night, Buffalo and Kansas City. Hudson Kern-Reeve in the chat room right now, one of our longtime listeners, our Ivy League representative here as he is a prof over at Cornell. He wants to know who you like in the Buffalo-Kansas City game Sunday night, probably the most anticipated game of divisional playoff weekend. JR, what are you feeling in this game? Is it going to be the Bills moving on, or is it going to be the Chiefs? And how do you apply that thought to what you're doing with your lineups this weekend?
Sure. So being from Boston, it's really hard for me to say this, but I really do think Buffalo has that revenge factor from last year, and they're even better this year than last year. They have the defense this year. They have some additional playmakers. So I really do think Buffalo is going to get it done, and that offense runs through Josh Allen. And, you pick him. He has a bad game, fine, I'd live with it. But I think he's going to win, and eventually I think the Bills are going to get to the Super Bowl. And it's always nice to have that QB on your team that is playing in the Super Bowl. And I think the Bills are going to get it done.
Last week we had Balky, are you still going?
Yeah, no, sorry. I just want to ask, we know the Bills are your AFC rep. What about in the NFC?
Yeah.
Who do you think represents the NFC in the Super Bowl this year?
I am rooting for Tampa Bay. Being a Boston guy, I'm still a Brady fan, but I really do think Aaron Rodgers is going to get the Green Bay Packers there.
There you
go. So it's a
Balky.
Bills-Packers Super Bowl, Farrell. Now
think so.
Here's the true question, guys. If JR's right and it's a Bills-Packers Super Bowl, is there enough alcohol in the country to supply all the fans at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles?
Probably not.
I don't know. Quite frankly, I don't know. Probably not. Farrell, let's get back to the FFPC playoff challenge part of this.
To be a bartender in Los Angeles Super Bowl week, if that was the matchup, would be just a glory position. Last week, Jeff Olivia on our show, he and I agreed that in the Super Bowl, that it's very or in the last week that you want to have in this contest one, your quarterback playing in the Super Bowl, and you are waiting to the last pick. You're taking your quarterback position last. Now, would that make you choose a quarterback from one of the favorite teams? All the favorites won last week, and it looks like you're pretty chalky with the teams that are going. Although Buffalo, I suppose, is a small underdog, and so that's my question about the first part of the question about the quarterback, and then as far as picking these 8 players. I love the fact that you talked about that outlier player. Last week Jeff brought up Odell Beckham Jr., who had a wonderful game. Man, Beckham had that pass and did a fantastic game, and he picked that up right away. Cooper Kupp, not such a great game, but still a big fantasy game, even as a player that is on a team. The quarterback only threw the ball 17 times. So my question really is, there's certain players that you're going to go and mark that box. Do you have that? And then do you agree with us that you want to have that quarterback in the big game?
I do. So my core players for this divisional playoff challenge is Devontae Adams. I have to have Devontae Adams on my team. He is going to get his no matter what happens. He's going to get a slice of the pie. Even with Randall Cobb coming back, I still think goes to Devontae Adams. My other two, you just mentioned Cooper Kupp. He same thing as Devontae Adams. He gets the ball, and he gets the ball often. And lastly, Jamar Chase. Same exact thing. He's a rookie, so maybe he doesn't have the name recognition as Cooper Kupp and Devontae Adams, but Joe Burrow looks to him every time he's going to throw the ball. He's his first target if he's open. So those are 3 guys that I definitely want on my team.
It's interesting. Good stuff there. Obviously from J.R. Covelle, the runner-up in the 2020-2021 FFPC Playoff Challenge. Good stuff there. So let's get into some players here, and I want to specifically talk about what's going on in Lambeau Field tomorrow night with the 49ers. Now, if you look at what you did last week, you had Deebo Samuel as your member of the San Francisco 49ers going forward. Seeing what you saw in Dallas this past weekend, are you still rolling with Samuel this weekend, or would you pivot to a guy like Mitchell, like Kittle, or somebody else in San Francisco going forward in this specific contest, JR?
So I liked Deebo last week, but I really like him this week. I mean, we saw that. I mean, if you watched that game last week, the 49ers know getting the ball in Deebo's hands early and often is their best chance at winning, and you saw that. I think he took the first carry of the game, or at least the first couple of carries. He got one of them. So why would they deviate away from that game plan because it works so well? I mean, he is the best athlete on the field, it seems. So I am definitely buying Deebo for the divisional round. As long as Elijah Mitchell doesn't pull a Raheem Mostert from 2 years ago and score 4 touchdowns, I think Debo's the pick. And I did not have Mostert that year in the divisional playoffs, and he was a great pick.
No. I so appreciate you bringing that game up. Somebody else bringing it up, other than myself, for Balky. But I feel for him there. Last time,
and I think Green Bay has the revenge factor, so I think they're gonna absolutely pound San Francisco this week, and I think that's just gonna propel them into the Super Bowl. And that's one of the reasons I like Green Bay so much.
Does your pick of Buffalo have anything to do with the first time this season back in October when you saw the Bills and Chiefs play?
No, you know what? It comes from watching that awful playoff game last week when they played the Patriots and absolutely manhandled them. And Josh Allen looked so good. Their defense looked so good. Devin Singletary looked so good. I had him on my fantasy team this year, and he kept his best game for the playoffs. He did not have a game like that all season. So I think they're just gelling at the right time, and they, I think, are going to show people, hey, it's not just the Chiefs and the AFC. We're here too, and we're going to show you that on Sunday night.
I think I would agree with you if they were playing this game at home. But I look at what I thought about the game when they played earlier is that Buffalo has awakened this Kansas City team. They're going to have to respond, and they've responded very well. And for our contest, we talked earlier in the intro, and I lined the players up as Kelsey, Mahomes, and Hill. And I haven't found Hill in any of my lineups. As you build this 8-man roster, obviously you feel that the Chiefs are one and done. So I imagine that Kelsey or Hill would be your Chief playing this weekend.
So I like Kelsey on the Chiefs, and one of the reasons is I feel the tight end, who's left for tight ends, it's a very weak position. You got Kelsey. I mean, you got Gronk, you got Uzomah, but even they get half the opportunities Kelsey gets. And Hill, if I remember correctly, is hobbling a little bit. So they are going to force feed Travis Kelsey the ball. And if the Chiefs end up winning, Travis Kelsey's not a bad – if the Chiefs end up going to the Super Bowl, Travis Kelsey's not a bad runner-up to have on your team in the Super Bowl. I had him and Brady last year as my 2 in the Super Bowl. And I feel like if you don't pick Kelsey, half the entries, 75% of the entries are going to have Kelsey, and I don't think there's a better tight end you can pick, and you don't want to fall behind with all those people that are going to choose him.
All right.
JR, one of the teams we have not talked a whole lot, and quite frankly, a lot of the podcasts, a lot of the content producers over the last week have not talked about a lot, has been the Tennessee Titans, which is weird because they are indeed the number 1 seed in the AFC and have home field advantage throughout the playoffs. How willing, if we wanted to pivot away from Derrick Henry, who should be one of the most owned, if not the most owned Titan members going into the divisional playoff challenge, how willing would you be able to trust A.J. Brown as your Titan over Henry?
Not very willing. I mean, A.J. Brown doesn't really do anything for me. If you look at the running backs that are left, similar to the tight ends, I feel like it's a very weak position. So I think, like you said, a lot of people are going to have Derrick Henry, and if you're not on the Derrick Henry bandwagon, you might have a perfect roster otherwise, but 50 teams, 100 teams could be ahead of you that have Derrick Henry, and if they advance to the Super Bowl, you want him on your team. So he's injured. I mean, I'm assuming he's not going to be on any type of snap count. We know the Titans are going to force feed him the ball if he's healthy, and it seems like he is. So I do like Derrick Henry. When you think of the Titans, you don't think of shootouts. You don't think of Ryan Tannehill as a great QB on the same level as Mahomes and the Bradys and the Rodgers. So I do like Derrick Henry. I'm just hoping he plays the whole game and gets his 20 to 25 carries.
I feel 100% the same way you do. I'm a big Brown fan, but when you look at the game logs from this year, there's just so many that were non-existent, and then the aspect of him getting hurt during the game. Oh, it just kills you. You know. Now you said that you didn't have Fournette last year, and Leonard returns to practice this week, and when he returns to the field, I think he's going to get a lot of use. As you, being a Brady fan consistently like you are, you noticed how Fournette here in the latter part of his career has developed into a meaningful pass catcher, adding a great deal to his fantasy upside. Is Fournette a player that you're going to put in the 8-player contest with the understanding that Evans is a fantastic target but draws a tough matchup this weekend?
So most likely, like everyone else filling these lineups out, I am on it every day tinkering with my lineup. And I have Fournette in, and then I have him out, then I have him in, then I have him out. So I don't know where I'm going to land with Fournette yet. But he is such an interesting pick, again, because of the lack of depth at the running back position. I mean, you got Aaron Jones, but then you're leaving Aaron Rodgers or Devontae Jones off. You have Devin Singletary, but, I mean, he had the game of his life last week. Is he going to repeat that? So Fournette is an interesting pick because if he comes back and he's healthy, again, I think Brady, he doesn't really have Brown anymore. He doesn't have Godwin. So I think if he plays and he's healthy, the offense might run through Fournette. I mean, it seems like Brady doesn't really care about the stats anymore this year, but he just wants to win the game. So Fournette might be a good pick. I don't know. He might be in my lineup. He might not. I'll probably make a final decision tomorrow at 4:25 before the first game starts.
That's the way to do it. Sometimes the best decisions are made right before kickoff. So I'm totally with you on that. Let's get to a couple of emails here as long as we have. Sure. Go ahead.
I was going to say last week at 4:28, I ran to my computer before that Bengals-Raiders game and took Joe Mixon out of my lineup, put in Jamar Chase, and took someone else out. And I was going on, I hope the lineup's not locked yet. And I just squeezed in my change. So, yeah, I'll be doing the same thing tomorrow.
I love it. And it's part of the reason why you won $15,000 in the FFPC Playoff Challenge last year, for sure. Let's get to a couple of emails here, as long as we have the time. Mike, who is listening to us from Sanborn, North Dakota, he writes, can you make any kind of case for going super contrarian and picking Dawson Knox as your Bills player in the Playoff Challenge number 2? Mike, thank you so much for listening in Sanborn, North Dakota. JR, I don't know. I mean, you're a Patriots guy. You understand. You've seen the Bills' offense. You know this competition. Fading Josh Allen, Devin Singletary, Stephon Diggs in favor of Dawson Knox, tight end premium. Can you do it or can you not?
If I was doing multiple teams, I think Dawson Knox would fit that unique player that if he does have a big game like last week, not many people are going to have him, and it's going to make your team stand out. So if I'm doing one team, I can't pick him. But if I was doing two teams, sure, I'd throw him in the lineup because he scored 2 touchdowns last week, and I don't know if you guys have the stats of who has who. I'm curious what percentage of the 5,000 entries had Dawson Knox on the team. I'm assuming very, very few. And I haven't looked at the leaderboard, but I'm sure a lot of the people that had him on the team probably are in the top 100 or 200 today. So maybe Dawson Knox if I had multiple teams. He's a great player, but he's no Travis Kelce.
All right. So one of the great things that we have on this program is the genius and everything that Darren Armani from FantasyMojo.com brings to the table. One of the things he brings to the table is the FFPC Playoff Challenge ownership. So while I cannot tell you what the divisional playoff ownership is right now, I can indeed tell you that for the world-famous FFPC Playoff Challenge last week, Dawson Knox was owned in a whopping 1.95% of FFPC World Famous Playoff Challenge. So less than 2% is what Dawson said. And Hudson Kern-Reeve is chiming in too in the chat room right now. He's saying like he is a great differentiator. If you are submitting, and I think this is more for people who are submitting multiple lineups in the divisional challenge. But if you're only submitting one, and you're willing to eschew Josh Allen, you're willing to say no to Devin Singletary, you're willing to turn your back on Stephon Diggs and all the other Buffalo receivers, Dawson Knox, certainly in a tight end premium format, would make for an interesting decision. Not sure if it's the right one, but an interesting one for sure. Let's get to the other email I have here for you, JR. It is from Dave in Chesapeake, Virginia. Hi, JR. I know I'm going to roll with a Packers running back in the FFPC Divisional Challenge, but I am split on which one to go with, Aaron Jones or A.J. Dillon. Congrats on last season's performance. That is Dave in Chesapeake, Virginia. Dave, thank you for listening and emailing. JR, what do you say? If you have made up your mind that you're going to fade Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers, are you willing to go with A.J. Dillon or Aaron Rodgers?
I'd go with Aaron Jones. I don't know too much about the Packers, but he's the bell cow from what I see, and Dillon is more the change of pace back. But again, Dillon would fit the category of unique differentiator perfectly. That if you did go with Dillon and he scored a couple of touchdowns, had a big game, you're going to be in the Dawson Knox category of probably 1% of players. So it depends on what kind of chance do you want to take? You want to go with the person that not many people will have, or more people I think is going to have Aaron Jones on their team?
Farrell, that's all the emails I have. We have one final question for Mr. J.R. Covelle. That's it.
You know, I really think we need to get Hudson Kernery a phone line and just get him in here and have him start using some of those biological words that none of us will understand and how he'll play. But by the end of the show, it will all come together. It would all be revealed, and it would be fantastic. And what's going to be fantastic right now, JR, is that you're going to reveal to us. And before I ask this question, I got to get a quick answer from you. Did you have any Raiders playing on your teams last week? And who were they?
I did not. I had Josh Jacobs in the lineup till about 4:28, and I ended up taking him out, so I had no Raiders on my team.
Would have been a pretty good play. And I assumed that too. So Carlson was my kicker, and Waller was a flex. Did I do wrong by playing those guys? Because both of them scored well, but they're gone. But you got to play some guys that lose.
Yeah, no, Waller was a great pick. Again, I feel like the offense goes through Waller. I think he was a great pick. And if they won, again, probably not a lot of people were going to have Darren Waller. A lot of the people that I know that did it had Josh Jacobs as their Raiders player. So I think it was a good pick.
Well, it did go down to the end, and, Jacobs had a good game too. He just didn't get the ball enough in that game. Who's not going to get the ball this week? A good player, a respected player that you are not going to touch. And then we talk a little bit about Dawson Knox. I don't know if he could repeat that performance, but is there a sleeper out there? And a sleeper that you put on your roster, you've already expressed Van Jefferson. Perhaps your sleeper could come from Tennessee. Is there a guy with a Darren Armani score of less than Dawson Knox who will be the sleeper and deliver a victory?
You know what? I don't have a sleeper at the category of Dawson Knox, but I do think a lot of people are going to pick Joe Mixon due to the lack of depth at running back. So if I had to pick a sleeper, and I use that in quotes, Jamar Chase is the perfect person. I feel like a lot of people are going to have Mixon, and a lot of people might sleep on Chase. So my sleeper, quote unquote sleeper, is Jamar Chase. I know he's a great player, and he had a great game last week. And my fade is going to be Odell Beckham. I think if you watched the game on Monday, all you heard was Odell Beckham's name. Odell Beckham, sure. Odell Beckham. He scored a touchdown. But if you look at the stats, Cooper Kupp outperformed him. He had more receptions. He had more targets. So, again, I think some people might say, wow, Odell Beckham had a great game. I'm going to pick him. He's a differentiator. But Cooper Kupp always gets his receptions, typically always gets the touchdown. So I can't pick Odell Beckham over Cooper Kupp on any of my teams.
Back to the sleeper question, Chase had a great game last week. From certain times from week to week, you'll get in a situation where a different Cincinnati receiver will appear. I think, assuming that Tennessee tries to take or minimize Chase's opportunities, would you even look or consider it playing Higgins as one of your receivers?
I would. I feel like a lot of the time that third wide receiver, and I'm assuming Higgins is third and Boyd is second, I feel like a lot of times the third wide receiver on any given team can have that big game. If they're doubling the first wide receiver, then the third wide receiver becomes very important in the second wide receiver. So I definitely would consider Higgins if I wasn't high on Chase. I definitely am down on Mixon. So I would want one of the Cincinnati Bengals receivers, and definitely Higgins would be my number 2 choice after Chase.
JR, this is going to be a little bit off the wall here, but I wanted to close the interview with this because we have FFPC drafts, redrafts for 2022 starting in just 2 days here. I'm just kind of curious. You look at the Patriots. I know they have the draft. I know they have free agency. Is there anybody that you look at with this team that we should be fading or maybe targeting in these early season drafts? I look at the running back situation, the receivers, obviously, the tight ends, who New England invested a lot of money in this past offseason, and, of course, Mac Jones, all as topics here. Any fades or targets with the Patriots this coming season as of right now?
Oh, well, the general rule for me is always fade the New England running backs, because any given Sunday from week to week, Bill Belichick might put a different running back and give him all the carries. So I always fade the New England running backs. Sometimes it works out. Sometimes it doesn't work out, but that's kind of my general rule. And I love Hunter Henry. And, I feel like him and Mac Jones had a good connection this year, and I think it's only going to strengthen as they have another year on the off season. And it seems like Hunter Henry's kind of a little bit older, kind of mentoring him a little bit. I read an article after the 47-7 playoff loss. Hunter Henry was the one that went and talked to Mac Jones to say, hey, forget about it, whatever. So I like Hunter Henry. I think he's going to be a bigger part of the offense. Not many people drafted him because they had Jonnu Smith also, but I think Hunter Henry's going to take the reins on that tight end position as he did toward the end of the season. So I like him a lot.
We like the FFPC Divisional Playoff Challenge a lot. We also love people who have cashed in it before. None more so tonight than J.R. Covelle, the runner-up last year who won $15,000 in this competition, looking for the big $100,000 grand prize. If you do want to compete against J.R., definitely go to myffpc.com and make sure you're signing up there. By the way, if you've never played in the FFPC before, go to myffpc.com/Eric. You could spell it the correct way, E-R-I-C, or the incorrect way, E-R-I-K, and you will get a free $25 credit for your first team on there. We all follow you on Twitter, JR, at JRBeef14. Thank you so much for spending this Friday night with us. I know you're busy contemplating lineups and trying to get to the mountaintop coming up this coming Super Bowl weekend in a few weeks. Thank you for all the insight that you provided. Good luck in all your teams going forward, and we'll certainly hope to talk to you again real soon, dude.
Thanks for having me on, and I'm just going to leave you with this. We've been talking about my good luck all night on the divisional round last year, but I want to tell you about my bad luck. 2 years in a row in the main event last year and this year and the year before, I had the number 1 pick, and both times I drafted Christian McCaffrey. And we know what happened to him 2 seasons in a row. So if I get the number 1 pick next year, I am not touching him with a 10-foot pole. I don't care if he's available. If I have the 12th pick and he's still available at 12, I am not taking him. So thanks for having me on. This is really fun. And I'm going to leave you with this. Don't be good. Be great, guys.
All right. Thank you, JR. And we will not leave you now because you just opened up a can of worms here because I want to ask you this now.
Sure.
You will not take McCaffrey at the 101. First question, if you are lucky enough to get the 101 in the FFPC main event this year, who would your 101 be as of right now? And at what point in the main event would you take Christian McCaffrey if he was still available to you?
So I split the team with my dad. It's something we do together. It's fun to do the draft with him and stuff. And he wanted Derrick Henry at number 1 this year. And I said, Dad, Christian McCaffrey is not going to get injured 2 years in a row. We're taking Christian McCaffrey. Derrick Henry does not get receptions, Dad. I do not want a running back that doesn't get receptions. So next year, if we have the number 1 pick, we are taking maybe Derrick Henry or maybe Jonathan Taylor. You know, both of those guys kind of impressed me this year, but it will not be McCaffrey. If I would take McCaffrey toward the end of the first round, but only because of the bad luck I've had with him 2 years in a row. He's Glass Joe from Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, so I don't want him on my team next year. But if I have to, I'll take him in the end of the first round, maybe beginning the second round, which I think he'll be long gone anyway.
Well, listen, the Christian McCaffrey revenge tour could begin with J.R. Covelle in the FFPC main event if he gets him at the end of the first round next year. We will be following that situation very closely. JR, we will not.
I thought this year was going to be the McCaffrey
program.
Revenge Tour. I thought this was the year McCaffrey Revenge Tour.
Sometimes you got to delay these things another year. It could be next year.
Exactly.
We shall see. If Christian McCaffrey follows your advice, man, he will not be good in 2022. He will be great. Thank you so much for your insight, and we'll do this again real soon, man. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the games this weekend.
You too, guys. Have a great one.
J.R. Covelle, ladies and gentlemen, the runner-up in the 2020-2021 FFPC Playoff Challenge number 2. Follow him on Twitter at JRBeef, like the meat, 14. Good stuff from Tim Farrell. And because we had such a great time with him, we don't have time for any questions tonight. Is there any parting words that you have for anybody listening to this podcast that has not yet submitted their Playoff Challenge number 2 lineups? Any pitfalls they need to avoid, any players they should target, any insight from the definitive commissioner of fantasy football?
Well, you're going to enjoy the weekend. You're going to enjoy the rest of the playoffs much, much more if you're playing in the FFPC in this divisional championship round. You've got less ways to get it wrong. You can't play Claypool. You can't play any Raiders. So you've got less ways to get it wrong. You've only got to pick 8 winning players. And, Bulky, they're out there. As you said last week when we had Jeff on, you know, Jeff's roster, it looked like a roster that anyone could have gone and picked that. You know, it wasn't chalky. It was just the right combination. So come on and play in the league. Enjoy the league. It will give you attention to the football that you'll be seeing, and it'll let you understand about next year. Everybody complained about the people that really didn't understand what they were watching. They said to me, oh, that was just a terrible game, New England and Buffalo. No, it was a great game. You see what JR took away from it. Is the Hunter Henry-Mac Jones relationship gelling even more and will be stronger next year. So there's plenty to learn as we get ready to redraft. And, Balky, why don't you tell us all about the redraft that begins in 2 days, because I want to go sign up for that because that's the stuff I live for.
Yeah, FFPC best ball drafts will be starting. We will be launching. I think we actually have a private best ball league already filled that will be going off on sometime on Sunday, probably when the Rams and Buccaneers are getting it on. That league is already filled. It will launch on Sunday. Everything open to the public. And myffpc.com will be launching on Sunday. So if you want to sign up for a best ball league and get an early jump on the competition, I'm reminded of this too, Farrell. We had Lance Turbis on the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, the season finale, I believe, or maybe it was the season premiere last season. And we talked about the importance of drafting early, whether it be best balls or early Football Guys Players Championship, early Kentucky main events, you know, and he talked about the deals he got on rookies like Kyle Pitts, like Jamar Chase, you know, Najee Harris. And he said, like, look, the reason that I was so successful is because I drafted early. You look at the ADPs of these guys, you know, in January and February versus what their ADPs were in August, September. It's incomparable, right? And so I think that's something that's important not only for the FFPC but for the KFFSC as well. You guys have the big game live championships going on coming up within the next 2.5 weeks, 2 weeks, right around there. Starting on February 12th.
Kick off on Saturday. We kick off on Saturday of the big game weekend, and we'll draft live on Saturday and Sunday. I'm still waiting for a commitment from you. And speaking of commitments, I didn't get one from Darren Armani for Super Bowl weekend, but I got one for next August. Darren's going to be in the room, and that's going to be a blast to have him.
Nice.
And, you know, Balky, anyone that can't come join us live for the party, in the draft. They won't have great stories of hanging out with you because I know you're coming. I can feel it in my bones.
Yep.
But we do have February 20th will be the final wrap-up of that 96-team league, and you can join that one online. That's exclusive online, February 20th. So if you can't make it to Kentucky, and that's the best thing being part of it, we'd love to have you in it. But, yeah, that's what we've got going on. We're going to have a blast on Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah, you got to get over to Louisville for sure. It's one of my favorite times of the year, and the fact that you can extend it multiple times a year, sign me up. Whenever I can go, I always do. Darren Armani, by the way, just noticed this in the FFPC high stakes best balls that were held live at Planet Hollywood in Las Vegas this past September. Darren Armani not only won the 750 best ball number 1, Darren Armani won the 750 best ball number 2 as well. So he dominated the FFPC best balls. If you want to beat a true high stakes champion in Darren Armani, KFFSC.com is where to do it. Of course, myffpc.com as well. Farrell, thank you so much for hopping aboard tonight. You are a true luminary, and we always love hearing your advice each and every week here on the program. We're actually going to talk off air here in a little bit as soon as I sign off. But thank you so much. We follow you on Twitter at KFFSC. We will check out the KFFSC online at KFFSC.com. Be good. We will do this again next week, man.
Thank you, Buck.
Farrell Elliott, ladies and gentlemen, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football. This completes our divisional playoff challenge preview of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Remember, if you have not signed up yet, what are you waiting for? The drafts go off tomorrow at 4:30 Eastern with the Bengals and Titans. Right now, I'm looking at the openings in the playoff challenges. You're looking at 535 entries, so we're roughly about pretty close to 70% full, with only, by the time if you're listening to this in the morning, Saturday morning, there's going to be fewer than 500 teams available. So make sure you're signing up there at myffpc.com. And, of course, the Football Guys Playoff Challenge number 2, divisional round, that is almost under 400 entries out of 4,000, so that is basically 90% full at this point. So make sure you're going to myffpc.com. And by the way, if you've never signed up and played the FFPC before, myffpc.com/Eric, that's ERIC, or if you want to misspell it, ERIK, you'll still get the promo. It's $25 off your first league. So make sure you're registering for that right now. I want to thank J.R. Covelle. I want to thank Farrell Elliott, the FFPC, Rob Bryce, and, of course, each and every one of you for hanging out and talking shop this divisional playoff weekend here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. It's been awesome, as it always is, with each and every one of you listeners. All right, so I want to remind you, if you want to get some last-minute advice with the FFPC Divisional Playoff Challenge 2, go to rotoviz.com/podcast, and you will hear my interview with the two-time FFPC Playoff Challenge number 2 sixth place finisher. He's done it twice, 6th overall. Vince Staffolino jumps aboard. We're going to talk strategy on that one. There's a lot of good stuff on there, especially if you're expecting to submit multiple entries into this year's challenge. There's a lot of good stuff on there that you want to hear. Your divisional
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and heard around the world. Balky and Farrell will be back next week with more analysis, interviews, and advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk with you again next week.
As a reminder, we will indeed return next Friday at 10/9 Central. Only a few weeks left in the season before we kick off the next season premiere of this program, which I'm very excited about. So we will have another big-time 2021 winner on the program next week, and we'll get you set for for conference championship weekend, which hopefully involves the Packers. We shall see on that. One reminder, give you a reminder, register for the FFPC Playoff Challenge number 2. This will, I know there's we're only like 2/3 full right now, but 2/3 full at this point. Listen, anytime it gets to Friday and Saturday, it's already been going fast today. Get in now, register your teams, and then, you know, the last hour or two before the Bengals and Titans kick off, that's when you can set your lineups. Don't miss out on this. $100,000, double the grand prize that we had last year. This is going to be so much fun, and I can promise you if you win, I guarantee you will be on this program telling everybody how you did it. Your divisional playoff weekend will start at 4:30 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow, and hopefully you can parlay your great football this weekend with some skin in the game, trying to win a 6-figure grand prize. Enjoy the games. Register for the playoff challenge. We'll see you next week.